Just think about it for a second. The phone in your pocket, the cars driving down your street, even the power grid that keeps your lights on, they all depend on batteries. They're like the invisible engines driving our entire modern world. And today, we're going to take a deep dive into the empire that builds them.
But that brings up a huge question, right? As we all make this massive shift towards an electric future, who's actually building the engine for it? Where is all this power really coming from? Well, the answer is in the data, and believe me, it tells a pretty incredible story.
Welcome to the Flow Tao Salon. For this explainer, we are digging into a really fascinating report that maps out the entire global landscape of battery production. It gives us a rare, inside look at one of the most important industries on the planet.
So, all our data today comes from an in-depth report by the research unit EO Intelligence. It's called the Insight Report on Country-Specific Opportunities for China's Storage Battery Industry, and it uses data that runs all the way through September 2025. So it gives us an amazing and up-to-date view of this absolutely critical market.
Okay, let's get right to it. The story here really kicks off with growth on a scale that is, well, it's just staggering. We're talking about a completely unprecedented export boom.
The speed of this growth is just wild. Look at this. In 2020, China's storage battery exports were about $202 billion. Just 3 years later, that number had exploded to almost $700 billion. The partial data for 2025 has already more than tripled the 2020 total. This isn't just regular growth. This is total market dominance unfolding right before our eyes.
Let's just pause on that peak number for a second. $699 billion in 1 year. You know, a number that big establishes China not just as another player, but as the dominant global force in a technology that is going to define this century.
So where are all these batteries actually going? Well, no surprise, the US and Germany are the top two, soaking up more than a third of all exports combined. But then look at the rest of the top five. Vietnam, the Netherlands, South Korea. These are huge tech and manufacturing hubs. What this tells us is that this isn't some simple trade relationship. Now, this is a deeply woven global supply chain with China sitting right at the very center of it all.
Okay, so that tells us the what and the where. But now let's get to the really interesting part, the who. Who are the actual corporate giants buying all these batteries?
We saw that the United States is the #1 customer. So who's actually placing these massive orders? The names on this list, well, they might just surprise you.
Take a look. These are not niche startups. We're talking about Toyota, putting batteries in the cars we drive every day. Nextera, literally powering our homes. Schneider Electric, managing our energy grids. These are absolute foundational pillars of the US economy, and they are all major customers.
All right, now let's jump over to another key buyer, Vietnam. It's a huge hub for electronics manufacturing. But the story here is totally different. It's not about a diverse group of companies. It's about the overwhelming influence of one single corporate giant. Samsung. I mean, just look at the top of the list. Samsung SDI, Samsung Electronics Vietnam, Samsung Electronics Taiwan. 3 of the top 4 buyers are all part of the same company. Their purchasing power here is so immense, it just goes to show you how a single corporation's strategy can basically shape the import landscape of an entire country.
Let's look at one more major market, India. This is another fascinating case, because with its own rapidly growing auto and electronics sectors, the list of top buyers tells yet another unique story.
In India, we see this really cool mix. You have homegrown industrial giants like Mahindra and Tata competing for, and relying on, the exact same supply as global players like Suzuki and BYD. This shows the incredible breadth of the customer base. Everyone from local champions to massive multinational corporations, they're all plugging into the very same source. So up to this point, it's a story of just explosive growth and this deep global integration. But the report also makes it really clear that the road ahead is, well, it's not without its obstacles. Let's take a look at the significant headwinds this industry is now starting to face.
The report groups these challenges into 4 main areas. We're talking about supply chain problems, like getting your hands on enough raw materials. Then there's fierce competition that's just crushing prices. You've also got the huge difficulty of setting up new factories and supply chains overseas. And finally, there's this growing web of international regulations and compliance rules. It's a lot.
And what's really interesting is that one of the biggest risks comes from within China itself. The report highlights these new export controls on battery technology. It's a strategic move for sure. It adds cost and uncertainty for global companies, and it's also a way for them to protect a key technological advantage.
And internally, there's this weird paradox going on. Companies are shipping more batteries than ever before, but they're actually making less money on each one. Why? Because of these brutal price wars. This race to the bottom puts huge pressure on profits, and it could really threaten the long-term health and innovation of the entire industry. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from that staggering growth to the major players and now to the serious challenges ahead. So, when you boil it all down, what are the most important things we should take away from all this data?
Well, this whole story really boils down to three key things. First, the sheer scale of China's dominance is just unprecedented. It's truly the center of the battery universe. Second, the global integration is incredibly deep. I mean, the world's most critical industries are completely reliant on this supply chain. And third, the risks are mounting. A perfect storm of geopolitics, regulation, and internal competition is really threatening to disrupt this entire empire.
And that leaves us with one final critical question. We've seen the data on the empire's incredible rise, but we've also seen the cracks that are starting to show. So as all these pressures continue to build, the biggest question of all is this: will this reign continue unchallenged?